You ready? Good evening, and welcome to those who are here in attendance at City Hall with us, and for those who are watching us at home. I am Mayor Laurie Jadwin, and I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your evening this evening to spend some time talking about sidewalks. Most exciting topic always to spend an evening talking about, but a necessary one. With me this evening is several members of our team. I have our city engineer, John Moorhead, our assistant city engineer, Caitlin Ridge. Sitting up on the dais up here is our Director of Public Service and Engineering, Grant Crawford. This is being live streamed. Everybody will have an opportunity to ask questions. So the way this will work this evening is John and Caitlin will share information on the 2021 Sidewalk Maintenance Program, walk you through the timeline, what you can expect, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions. For those of you who are watching from home, you can ask questions via the chat. Our communications manager, Karen Wester, is here as well. She'll be monitoring the chat and relaying your questions to us as the program unfolds over the next hour or so. This is the first year for the 2021 Sidewalk Maintenance Program. It's an important year, and you are the very first participants in this program. The Sidewalk Maintenance Program was officially adopted by Council, our Gahanna City Council. We have several members here, last fall. But it is a topic that has been discussed by our City Council, I think, since 2015. And I know in the back we have Councilwoman Nancy McGregor and Councilman Stephen Renner and Trenton Weaver here, and Councilman Renner shaking his head that, yes, we've been talking about this for a long time. One of the most frequent complaints that we receive at the city, usually in the form of a code enforcement complaint, concerns the condition of our sidewalks. We've heard for many years from our residents that connectivity and walkability are high priority items for them, that having sidewalks and trails that are easily accessible and in good condition are items that simply are just, they're must-have items for our community. The care and maintenance of sidewalks for many years has been the responsibility of the homeowners as dictated by the Ohio Revised Code, by state law. And for many years, the city has not been able to help our residents with that. But thanks to Issue 12 being passed back in May of 2019, the city is now in a position where we can help with that. So this program was specifically created to help our residents with that burden of maintaining the condition of the sidewalks that are in front of your home. As you're going to hear tonight, this program really is an affordability tool, and it's a situation where the city will be able to go out and make repairs to your sidewalks, and then the residents can pay that repair back over a period of years. Again, an affordability tool to help ease that burden for our homeowners. Again, something we are now able to do thanks to Issue 12. So I'd like to thank you again for tuning in this evening. We have a lot of information to share with you tonight. Again, don't forget you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. For those of you who are here, there's note cards and pens. If you run out of note cards, we have more. You're not limited to one note card. It's okay. And again, for those of you watching from home, please use the chat to ask questions. And now I'd like to turn it over to our city engineer, John Moorhead.
Thank you to everybody who's here and who's tuning in online as well. It's a difficult time to try to hold any kind of public forum and get valuable discussion back and forth, but that is our main goal tonight. We wanted to hold a town hall so that we can both present information about what you can expect to see with this program and also have a meaningful back and forth with you about your questions and your desires to learn more about this area. So we're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation that describes some of the features of the program, the steps that are going to take place. And then at the end of that, Caitlin and myself are here to answer questions that you have. I know we're receiving some prior to this meeting, and we're going to continue to receive them through the presentation. So if you'll entertain us for a moment, we'll go through and just address some of the items that we wanted to share with you, and then we'll get to the discussion later on. Maybe. So the main agenda tonight is that we're going to talk through what the goals are of this program. The mayor addressed a lot of the background for how we got to this, but we want to clarify what we hope to achieve here. And then getting into what areas are going to be affected by this year's program, what it's going to look like, and who we are. So if you take nothing else away from tonight, I want you to know that me and Caitlin are the people that you can contact with any questions. If you want us to come to your house, to look at your sidewalks with you, to address anything that you have, please reach out to us. We're happy to come meet you and come to where you are so that we can help get information in your hands. The overall goal of our program is really to provide a connected network of pedestrian paths through the city. You may say sidewalks are already that network, but in a lot of our neighborhoods, they are in such disrepair that you really can't utilize them reliably for walking down the street. If you're disabled, certainly in a wheelchair, or simply difficulties walking, it can be a real challenge to go from one point to another. And the goal of this program, the reason that the city is structured it the way we have, is so that we can produce continuous runs of sidewalk that are in good repair throughout neighborhoods, and then build off of those runs in a way that we will someday be able to connect the entirety of the city with a well-maintained sidewalk system. Currently, we did an assessment of most neighborhoods of the city, and we found that about 30% of the sidewalks had some need of repair. About 10% of them were so far out of repair that you really couldn't jog down the sidewalk, you couldn't push a baby stroller down the sidewalk without encountering some kind of real hardship as you went down. So our goal is to correct that. Why does sidewalk need to be maintained is a multi-level question. So from a federal level, the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990 established that all accessible routes must be maintained the key word is operable working condition, so that they must be usable for the purpose that they were intended for. And that just sets the requirement that the sidewalks be maintained. State law goes further and identifies that adjoining property owners share responsibility for maintaining the sidewalks, and then Gahanna's own codified ordinances go into much greater detail about how that maintenance would be performed, what exactly of concrete sidewalk or driveway. You can get about 50 to 75 years out of that. So we are right in that area where the concrete is simply getting to a point that it needs attention to be maintained. High Meadow has some different challenges in that there's a large number of street trees on High Meadow Drive that have led to major vertical offsets in the sidewalk, tripping hazards as you go down the roadway. These are the two streets that are part of the 2021 sidewalk program, and these are what we're focusing tonight's town hall on. Those residents, you all received invitations to come here tonight, and we're going to go into some detail about what the process will look like in these neighborhoods. You should have received a brochure in the mail. If you threw it away with other junk mail, we have extras in the back you're welcome to pick up. That included a letter just describing what our program will be. If you didn't get that, you can email us at sidewalks@gahanna.gov, and we will send you that information again. Just let us know your name, your property address, and your mailing address, and we'll get one back out to you. Now to go into the process of the program, I'm going to pass it over to Caitlin Ridge here, who's going to give you some details of the 5 steps we're going to follow through. We are in step 1 currently, and she's going to give us details of the following steps.
So as John mentioned, we're in step 1 of the program right now, which is the sidewalk inspection portion, which I know several of you are probably aware that that's been going on. You've seen someone out looking at your sidewalks in the last couple of months. The next stage of our process, step 2, is going to be to communicate those inspection results to the property owners. After that, then the property owners will have the option to complete the repairs on their own. So we'll have a stage for that, stage 3. And then stage 4, we'll follow that up with the city making the repairs as part of the program. And then we'll fall into the assessment stage, stage 5, for the assessment of the actual cost of the repairs that are made by the city. So as step 1, the sidewalk inspection process, we have sidewalk maintenance guidelines that we developed that are to help us as we're inspecting. It's what we're using to determine if your sidewalk panels need repaired. You can find a copy of those guidelines on our website at the gahanna.gov /sidewalk-maintenance.program. So these guidelines, I'm going to go over those and show some example pictures of what they each look like. So any sidewalk panels that have projections or an vertical offset from the panels that's greater than 1/4 of an inch are going to be required to be repaired. Also, any joints or cracks that are greater than 1/2 inch offset, Again, that's a horizontal offset. Any cross slopes on sidewalks that are greater than 7%. And to provide some clarity on that as far as a cross slope, with ADA, guidance is 2%, so that's why we are looking at cross slope as a consideration. Then also, if a sidewalk panel slopes away from the street, the reason we're looking at this one is that it can cause water or ice to accumulate on the walkway, which causes a safety hazard. There's also excessive cracking, and excessive cracking is more clearly defined as cracking that breaks up the panel into pieces that are less than 2 feet in any direction. Also spalling, and spalling is anything, a chunk of concrete that has broken away from the panel that's greater than 2 inches in any direction. And then any other conditions that our director sees as something that is causing an unsafe walk. Some of those things could include surface deterioration, vegetation and cracks, and wedges where there previously some homeowners have made repairs to their sidewalks by putting in kind of a concrete wedge. And partial infill, which means dirt from underneath the panel has washed away and isn't properly supporting the panel. So it's easier for it to break.
I think we've lost our feed for a moment, but I wanted to talk about the items that Caitlin just reviewed, the things that we're looking for during the inspection. It seems like a fully comprehensive list, but the goal there is that we are targeting things that do pose a hazard to folks. We do get calls and reports every year about people who have been injured tripping on a sidewalk, who either tripped and fell down or slipped or otherwise had a major injury. And our goal with the program is, again, to create a connected pedestrian route, but is also an attempt to remove hazards for the overall public health and safety. So that's what we used in trying to target our criteria for what constitutes a need for repair on a sidewalk.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, just as you review the guidelines further, if you have any questions about it and maybe how it applies to your sidewalks, feel free to give us a call. The number is 614-342-4050.
So another criteria that we're looking at, and that is particularly important for the High Meadow Drive area, is trees. The trees that are planted along the street side in Gahanna are, by and large, were not put there by residents. They were installed by the property developers when those subdivisions were created. And owing to the time that they were put in, some less than ideal choices were made in species. The city maintains a list of what we call prohibited trees through our comprehensive landscape plan that our landscape board, an elected and appointed committee, put together. And that list includes species that either are known to be weak wooded potentially and might fall and cause a hazard, or have shallow roots where they may cause damage to utilities or sidewalks. In our program, if there is a street tree, a tree between the sidewalk and the road that is causing a problem with the sidewalk, the city would remove that tree as part of our construction program if it caused damage to a sidewalk, number one, and if it is a prohibited tree, number two. Another condition that it might get removed is if our city forester looks at the tree and determines that it is either unhealthy or unsafe to attempt to preserve the tree, that it poses a hazard and the repair of the sidewalk might destabilize it or cause it to fall down. In the conditions where a tree has caused a sidewalk, disrepair, our inspectors will be marking a white circle on that sidewalk panel. White X's are anywhere that there is a sidewalk that has been determined to need some type of repair for any reason. But if there's a circle present, that means the tree adjacent to that sidewalk panel has been identified as the cause of the problem. So through the city's program, we understand that residents oftentimes didn't construct these trees. Removing trees can be an expensive endeavor. And we, the city, will be paying the cost of tree removal for any repairs to sidewalks that we take on as part of our program. So if you have questions about trees, and there are many questions about trees, what is a prohibited tree, where can you find the list, please reach out to us and we can give you that information directly or put you in touch with our forester if you have more detailed discussions even then. But I want to point out this aspect of it, especially for those on High Meadow, where there are lots of trees. They are going to be blooming here in a few months, and we understand that's a big appeal to that community.
So now we're entering into stage 2, which is the communication of the inspection results to the property owners. So you will be mailed the inspection results. So when you get this in the mail, please do not throw it away. There may be some actions required for you to make. The mailer will include a map or an exhibit that shows the panels, the location of the panels that need to be repaired, as well as identify the main cause or need for that repair. Please note that it will not include all reasons that that panel needs repaired. It's just going to list the primary reason for the repair. You can see here on the slide an example letter of what it might look like. It'll also include an estimated cost of the repair through the program. Again, that's just an estimated cost. It'll also include information on how to opt out of the program to make the repairs yourself, and a lot of other important details about the next steps in the process. So again, please do not throw that away, and as you get it, if you're reviewing it and looking at the guidelines, please give us a call if you have any questions, and we'll be willing to come out, take a look at it with you in the field, and answer any questions that you have. So next step is step 3. You've chosen to opt out of the program. That means that you have chosen to make the repairs on your own or get your own contractor to make the repairs, that you're not going to be a part of the assessment process of the program through the city, and you can choose a contractor of your choosing. And as part of that also, during the program, as far as the city making the repairs, we plan to do 2 primary construction methods. We're either going to replace the sidewalk panel, or we're going to do what's called precision cutting or edge shaving. So those are the 2 primary construction methods that we will use. If you choose to opt out of the program, there are several other construction methods out there that are approved, that are acceptable, that you may use. What are the requirements for opting out? As part of that, you're going to have to notify us in writing once you receive this notice. There's a deadline associated with that will be in the mailer. Then you'll have to obtain a right-of-way construction permit before you do the work. As part of that construction permit process, you will have to let us know the construction methods that you plan to use to make the repairs so that we can approve them. So we will do a site review with you to look at the repairs that are needed and the construction methods you plan to use to make sure that they're appropriate. We will also be inspecting the work, the form work, as part of that process to make sure that it does meet the guidelines, that it's repaired properly. And then we will also be doing a follow-up. You'll have a deadline for the repairs to get made. And after that deadline, the city is going to go out and look to make sure that everyone who opted out of the program actually made the repairs. Anyone who does not make those repairs that were requested to be made will be re-entered into the program so that the city can make sure that those repairs get made. Then we have construction by the city, stage 4. So if you choose to remain in the program, or if you perhaps get re-entered into the program, you'll be entering this stage with us. The benefits of staying in the program are that if a tree removal is required, if that's noted on your inspection results, that you will not have to pay for the tree removal, as John spoke to earlier. If you opt out of the program, you will be responsible for paying for the removal of a tree if you choose to do so. Gahanna also, as part of this, is going to obtain and manage a contractor for all the work that's being done. And we'll be doing this on a bulk contract. Everyone who's in the program is going to be a part of one big contract that gets bid out to a contractor. As part of that, usually if you have, just a few repairs on your property, a lot of times you can do it cheaper through a bulk contract through the purchasing power that the city has, rather than getting someone to come out to do just a couple of panels at your property. However, there may be cases at which the type of repairs that you need to make, or you just happen to know someone in the field that you might be able to do it cheaper on your own. That's up for you to decide how you want to proceed. Another benefit to being in the program is that all the repairs made by the city will have a 1-year warranty. So if anything happens to that panel that makes it be in disrepair within that 1-year time frame, the city will come out and repair, replace whatever it is, that panel within that year. Another benefit is that this is more of an affordability tool. And John is going to speak more to this. It's part of the assessment process. So you'll hear more about that from John. So what is it going to look like when they go out and do the construction? We've talked about that there's going to be removal of trees, pruning of trees, replacement of sidewalk. Here you see a picture of what the precision cutting or the edge shaving looks like. We are planning right now to do the construction during the summer. Hope to get all the repairs done prior to the school season. And as part of this, as you can imagine, there might be temporary impacts to access to the sidewalk, to your driveways, and potentially disruptions to parking along the street whenever they're doing work on that side.
Thank you, Caitlin. So as she described, the program that the city will be constructing is going to include a bid project that goes out to cover the entire program area and all repairs in it. We described that you're going to get a letter that tells you what the estimated cost of repairs might be on the upfront side of this process. So back in step 2, immediately following this inspection, you'll receive a letter that describes the estimated cost of repair if the city does the work. Once the work is complete, we will take the actual bid value, the value that we pay the contractor, and use that to establish what would be owed by specific homeowners for the work done on their property frontage. We've had questions about whether we're averaging the cost of the whole program. We are not. We are looking exclusively at the work that would be done on your property. And the way that that would be assessed is that the city of Gahanna has budgeted for and will be paying the cost of construction out of our pocket up front. So when we go out and do this construction work, the contractor who's out there doing it is in contract with us, and we will be paying them to complete the work. Once it's done and accepted, at that point, we would go through what's called a special assessment process, and that allows the city to recoup the funds from the adjoining property owner over a 5-year period, and there would be a 0% interest rate on that. So the value of work performed on your property would be passed through to the county auditors to property taxes and would be paid back over a 5-year period, 0% interest rate. That is the heart of the affordability part of this, is that you get to both take advantage of the large-scale contract for concrete services by the city and then pay the cost of those services over a 5-year period rather than whatever arrangements may exist, if any, on just an individual contractor basis. So this is where, at the end of the program, we will have legislative action to move this forward. And the goal is that these funds that are spent this year get recouped over years to come and reinvested into this program so that the city's overall budget is preserved and that we are not expending excess taxpayer dollars, which these are taxpayer dollars, to make these repairs on a long-term basis. We instead take the funds that are recouped back from this and use it to reinvest in other neighborhoods of the city and keep this program operating on the long term with the eventual goal that the entire city is maintained. Now, you can find more information, and we'll be updating our information on the city's website. There is a specific web page at gahanna.gov/sidewalk maintenance program. You can email us, sidewalks@gahanna.gov, or contact the engineering phone line at 614-342-4050 if there's any more information that you would like to receive. That is the end of our formal presentation here, and we encourage anyone to ask questions or offer comments, and we'll do everything we can to help address those.
We have several questions that were submitted through the Google form that was online, and also a few from social media and some that were submitted via email. So if it's okay, we'll go ahead and go through some of those, and then we'll take some from the audience. If you wrote some down, I'll come and get those as well. I tried to group these kind of in different topics, so I'll do my best to kind of keep it organized. The first one, can you please explain the X and O system that was marked on the sidewalk?
So the X's are a case where a sidewalk has been deemed to have some type of disrepair by an inspector. The O system is where there is a disrepair and it is caused by a tree. So again, the key thing to think is any white paint marking on a sidewalk indicates that there has been something determined to be in need of repair on that sidewalk. But if there's an O there, the tree that is next to that panel would be evaluated to potentially be taken down as part of this year's sidewalk program.
John, I say, just to make clarification too, that could indicate a private tree or a street tree, but only street trees will be removed as part of the program. Private trees will not be removed.
Yeah.
We received several questions about the contractor the city will hire to do the work. First question is the city contractor that's going to do the work, will they be doing it at an inflated price? Is it more cost efficient because they have an entire citywide program area for a particular year?
So it's a good question because I think it comes up oftentimes in public works that there is what's called prevailing wage. The city has to pay what's known as a prevailing wage, which is in essence a union wage to a contract. And that can be more expensive than what you might pay for a private contractor, or certainly if you did the work yourself. But the counterpart to that is, as we mentioned, bidding a project that is so large compared to what may be a portion of your driveway or a portion of a sidewalk, we get much lower prices for the unit price itself. 1 square foot of sidewalk, we, the city, would pay less through our contract generally than an individual might. So I would expect it to not be an inflated rate. It would be a standard rate, and again, it is a publicly bid contract. So we would advertise it to the entire contracting community and then evaluate the bids that we receive to find the lowest and best contractor and select them to move forward. If in a circumstance that the bids we received were far out of line with what we had estimated and we felt that they were too high or they were too inflated, we reserve the right to reject those bids and rebid the program and just say this is too expensive and we don't want our residents to have to pay this price for the work.
That pretty much answered question 2, but just to be clear, we do not have a contractor identified at this time, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, we don't identify the contractor until after the bidding process, at which point we evaluate the contractors who submitted bids and choose, again, the lowest and best qualified contractor.
Will the contractor be guaranteed a minimum?
Not exactly guaranteed a minimum, no. The work that we will bid is going to be based on the inspections we performed. So we will bid that amount out. If residents make their own repairs, the amount of work may be reduced, but they are not guaranteed any minimum amount of work.
And then we had a question, what is the estimate cost per square for repairs, per panel?
Good question. I had a conversation with a construction engineer about this morning, and the good news, in light of all the other inflation of materials and construction pricing, is that concrete itself hasn't seen the inflation that other things have. If you try to buy nearly any type of lumber, any type of piping these days, it is much more expensive than you would have paid 2 years ago. Concrete hasn't seen the same challenges. It's mostly locally sourced. We have a lot of aggregate in Central Ohio. So for these types of repairs, there's two main things the city will be doing. One is shaving off if there's a tripping hazard. We'll go in and we'll grind off the tripping hazard itself and kind of angle it. That we estimate to be between $45 and $75 per panel. If the panel needs to be replaced and whole, so one square or one panel is usually the space between the joints of the sidewalk. That cost can be between $200 to $300 depending on the size of the panel. Some are bigger than others, but in general it falls in that range.
So we've got, actually one just popped up in the chat here with a contractor. If the contractor hired by the city causes any damage to the property owner's lawn, will the contractor, city, or property owner be responsible for repairing?
The contractor in that situation would be responsible. So a standard condition of any public works project that the city does is that contractors are responsible for restoration of any damage they cause to an equal to or better condition than when they arrived. So they would be reseeding any grass disturbed, they would be repairing any ruts or any damage if they occurred. That is something that we look for as a rule in all of our projects is, has this contractor caused damage outside of the scope of their work that they need to address? And we withhold payment to contractors until those items are finalized out.
Question on the inspection process. Who made the initial assessment on what needs to be repaired? Was it a city employee or a contractor?
The inspection that's been performed today and is ongoing now is being conducted through a contractor hired by the city's engineering division. I can say that Caitlin and myself just today walked the entirety of Empire Drive, and we are actively working with that inspector and reviewing the work that they do to make sure that it meets our expectations.
Thank you. Couple financial questions. Why can't city taxes or city revenue pay for the program in its entirety?
Yeah, that is a good question. And one twist on that question, or one twist that I don't think is answering the question, is that the city taxes are paying for the program in its entirety up front. So the city has budgeted to make these repairs this year out of city tax dollars. However, those tax dollars would be recouped in part, not in full, through an assessment, because we are paying to hire consultants, we are paying for some types of repair at, say, intersection crossings and ramps, we are paying for tree removal. So only a portion of what the city budgets is being recouped through these assessments. To the question of why isn't the city paying for everything, it's a matter of trying to balance the other needs for capital work that the city has. We have need for staffing, we have a need for deferred street maintenance, we have need for deferred utility maintenance, and all of those needs are occurring at once. So the city is using the issue $12 to try our best to balance all needs that the city has, and what we can dedicate to the sidewalk maintenance program is this program that we're describing tonight, where we can at least pay up front, offer a deferred payment program to residents, and take out some of the most expensive items, tree removal being one, and hold that burden ourselves.
Is there any specific help for senior citizens or anyone on a fixed income through federal or state funding?
I don't believe there is.
Next question, is there a pay in full option instead of having it assessed to our property taxes?
Yeah, that is one thing that we are working on that we hope to have as part of this year's program, is that instead of having the cost assessed over a 5-year period, that you could choose to pay the full amount and avoid that assessment. And there's a number of reasons why someone might choose to do that, but for some people it's a matter of principle. For others, it's just the value itself. It's possible that you might be facing an assessment of $50 and just think that sounds silly and want to pay in full. So what I can tell you is that the web page that we had up, and I'll go back to that slide, when and if we get that program up and running, there will be details of it on this web page, and you will be receiving repeated mailings from us with the actual cost of work performed. There will be instructions for a pay in full option in there. Our goal is to get that up and running by the time this program would be concluding in August or September of this year.
We had several questions about Ohio Revised Code, Section 729. First one is, some people feel the city or the sidewalk is city-owned and should not be a homeowner's responsibility. Can you explain what is outlined in the Ohio Revised Code?
Yeah, so the Ohio Revised Code is a long-standing section of code that describes that not just sidewalks, but curb and gutter and other street-side amenities can be the responsibility of the adjoining property owner. And that has been around for some time. It's a common belief by many that everything, basically sidewalk, curb, everything is the responsibility of the city and is part of the street. And that isn't the case. Gahanna's local ordinances have had a clarification that residents, adjoining property owners are responsible for the sidewalk for many years. That is not a new change with this program. So all of those legal backgrounds have been maintained with this program. The original rationale behind that, and I may misspeak on this, but was that many cities, when sidewalks became more common, curb and gutter became more common, the cost of maintaining those facilities in the added infrastructure, they didn't have the funding for it. But that's what developers wanted to build. That is what residents of these new neighborhoods wanted in their neighborhoods. And so the state law at the time was created to talk about who's actually responsible for these features that are getting installed. As I said, there's kind of three levels of this. There's the federal requirement that these sidewalks be maintained. There's the state requirement that identifies that adjoining property owners maintain sidewalks and other features. And then there's Gahanna's code that gets very specific as to the requirements for maintenance, how the maintenance will be performed, and just reemphasizes that the adjoining property owner is the responsible party.
The next question regarding that is, why haven't we enforced this before now? People may be blindsided by suddenly having to deal with this.
So I think that it would be unfair to say that it hasn't been enforced until now. What is different now is that we are using a program to seek sidewalk improvements in a large continuous stretch. So enforcement on a property-by-property basis, on a complaint-driven basis, has been occurring, but what happens is you just get a repair at one property. And if you are walking your children to Royal Manor Elementary, or you're walking to a bus stop on Morse Road, that one property's improvement is a benefit, but it doesn't help you get there. It doesn't fix the problem of you having to get all the way to your destination on the sidewalk. And so the program that we're following is trying to build that continuous path. This is a model that's being used by many other municipalities in Central Ohio and across the state to do that. And we feel it is the best solution here. I will say code enforcement activity is continuing. So there is still code enforcement action in other parts of the city that are not subject to the sidewalk program in 2021. So we do still enforce sidewalk code. These same criteria are in effect everywhere in the city and could be subject of a code enforcement action.
The next question, explain the difference between paying for the sidewalk program and paying for a street program. I think people are linking the two as being very similar. So explain why the programs are so different.
So the streets themselves are fully the city's responsibility to maintain. And we do so fully with our own money and your own money through taxpayer dollars, sometimes through grants. The difference is this Ohio Revised Code and City Code requirement that adjoining property owners are responsible ultimately for the sidewalk maintenance. And that is where the funding becomes different. We do occasionally, what may be a point of confusion, is that we do occasionally improve sidewalk at intersections. So curb ramps get replaced, portions of sidewalks get replaced next to intersections when we do roadway work. That's linked to a federal requirement that the street is technically a crosswalk, and the crosswalk continues onto the sidewalk for some distance. So even within this program area, there are portions of sidewalk next to crosswalks that the city will be paying to maintain. So the same criteria that we use to determine, is this a city, a public sidewalk with the street program, we are using that same criteria with the sidewalk program when we get to crosswalks.
Another question about, I think it's an opt-out question, or I guess an opt-in question. If we don't hire our own contractor, how does the Billback or Payback work?
So yeah, I think what this question is if you don't choose the option to repair yourself. So the Billback or Payback is this assessment process. So once the work is completed, the city pays the contractor the work that was performed, and then we have a tally of how much sidewalk was fixed on each individual property. The process would be that we notify the property owners of what that number is, what the cost would be. Then there is a process by which we go to our legislative body here, City Council, and we seek what's called a special assessment on those properties for the value of the work performed. That then, once passed, goes to the county auditor, where they add it to the property tax bill for the adjoining property. And again, it would be 5-year payment with 0% interest. So 1/5 of the total cost would be paid over 5 years in taxes. So if it was $1,000, it would be $200 every year that would be added to the property tax bill at, again, no interest.
We got a question in the chat, I think specifically about you mentioning that you inspected or walked along Empire Drive today. The question is, were you satisfied with the assessment of the contractor?
With the work performed by the contractor? I guess you're reading the
Yeah, I believe that,
question, so.
there's a couple, I believe that is what he's asking, yes.
Yeah, so we did meet with the contractors to review the inspection results on Empire Drive. And based on that, we are going to be changing some of the findings out there, likely reducing some of the sidewalk that they have determined to be in need of repair. We did have some questions about whether or not they were applying our criteria correctly. And again, that's part of our involvement in back-checking their work. The current goal is that, based on today's meeting with them, we will be updating that criteria, and any mailers, as Caitlin described, the letter you'll be receiving that shows what sidewalk would actually truly need repaired, that will be correct. The markings in front of your home may not be 100% accurate today, but the mailer you receive will reflect our review of their work.
Okay, thank you. We've got one question in the chat. This was also submitted ahead of time, specifically about Empire Drive near Knights Avenue, about flooding. Flooding is occurring in the front yard during heavy rains. Why are we repairing sidewalks before the drainage or flooding problem has been addressed?
So I saw that question come in, and I do intend to look further into what the flooding concern is on Knights Avenue. There has been a history of flooding, yeah, in the neighborhoods through there, and so I do want to look more into that. Gets into the cars, you say? So if somebody, I'll connect with you guys after this, so I can get more specific information of where and who I can talk to get more details, but they are separate programs. And so I mentioned we try to balance the needs of different parts of the cities, whether it's facilities or streets or parks or sidewalks or sewers. We dedicate funding sources and funding streams to separate things. There is a dedicated utility fund for sewers. that money doesn't go towards sidewalks, nor we don't reduce the money towards sewers by spending money on sidewalks. So I believe that we can address a broad spectrum of utility concerns and not have a detriment to those efforts by the sidewalk program. I want to get in touch with you guys afterwards too. Yeah.
Make sure this is working. It is. We'll pass this around. You guys are welcome to come up to the microphone if you have questions. Just a couple more, I think, that we need to cover. When will homeowners get an estimate of what the city will charge for sidewalk repairs? So that letter.
Yeah, we're expecting that to go out in late February.
Okay, and if street trees are not identified as cause for the sidewalk projections, can we request trees to be removed to prevent future projections or disrepair?
Not as part of this program. The funding for this is limited, and we do want to try to work through the entire city. So in the scope of the sidewalk program, the only work that's going to be performed is work to correct problems with sidewalks that we find during this inspection. We don't want to grow the scope of what we're spending those dollars on and then have to, slow our pace of fixing sidewalks or take on issues that are outside of the defined vision of fixing the sidewalks that are out there today.
Okay, and we're jumping around a little bit at this point, but what is the breakdown of costs if a homeowner chooses to opt out and do the work themselves? What other fees will be involved?
From the city of Gahanna, there would be no fee for sidewalk repairs through our right-of-way permit. It is a free permit. The inspection that we conduct is free of charge. So if you opt out and choose to repair the sidewalk on your own, there is no cost there. I will say there is a driveway permit. So if you decide you're just going to replace everything and you're going to go through and replace your whole driveway, there is sometimes a permit through our building department for a driveway that I believe is $25. But by and large, no fee for the right-of-way permit, no fee for the inspection.
We got a specific question about the inspection and work, when that will commence for Maybank Court. Do you have anything specific for specific streets?
The inspection is complete nearly on Empire, and portions of High Meadow have been inspected already. So I know they're working to the north and east. So they'll be near the end of the inspection period. As you can imagine, they've been delayed by the snow that's been persistent for the last few weeks here, and I hear getting some more, maybe tomorrow. So weather dependent, it's a few weeks out.
Okay, I'm going to, you guys need to ask some questions, I think. There's a few more, but. You got it?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to pass this around if you guys want to come up or if you have questions, whatever you want to do. Does anybody have anything they want to ask from the floor or come up here? Now's your chance.
That may or may not be live.
You had mentioned grinding of the sidewalks. There's also pumping epoxy underneath of them. Is that approved?
Yeah, so for residents who want to complete their own repairs, there's leveling where they pump grout or sometimes foam underneath the sidewalks. There's grinding. There is shaving with an angle grinder. There are lots of methods that you could use to repair a sidewalk. So those that you've described, yes.
Also, with the half-inch gap between the panels, can an epoxy be forced down into it to bring it level?
Maybe not an epoxy, but there are joint sealing.
Different types
yeah,
of-
There's joint filler compounds that could be used for that. And that's one area where if you have an idea for how you want to repair a sidewalk, again, please call us. We've tried to leave it fairly flexible for residents, that if they like a certain practice or they want to do a certain type of repair on their own, we want to allow that. We just, like an epoxy or certain types of hardened
They
products.
use it on bridges and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. There's a flexible joint sealer that goes on bridge decks that we would recommend that you use if you wanted to go that road.
Okay, on the process of appeal, do we have to come before council and present a case with pictures and documentation to prove our point into whether or not it was our fault that the sidewalk was in disrepair? Some of the panels that they marked for myself were where the access was from the street and the crosswalk. And also where they replaced a fire hydrant and the ground sunk
Gotcha.
and the concrete broke.
So I'll answer it with two answers. So in the first case, if you have any concerns over what's been marked in the field and we can help clarify that or meet you out there, please by all means call us up. We're happy to meet you, not our contractor, us, and come out and review it with you to make sure that we all understand what's been marked and why. But there is a formal appeals process. It doesn't go to city council, but it goes to, I believe, a property appeals board.
Yeah.
There will be information about that in the notice, the letter that we send out with inspection results. There's a timeline to appeal that is part of that. As we said, you guys are the first group going through this program, so I can't speak to what exactly that would look like, but I imagine much like you described. You present a case, and they would hear your case.
Okay, as you were out there walking Empire Road, you noticed that probably 95% of all squares were marked?
We did notice a large number of squares marked, yes.
Okay, because I'm on a corner and it's pretty flat. There are a few cracked panels and stuff like that. But, you know, I'm responsible for over 200 feet of sidewalk to be repaired. And you mentioned $5, $50, and $1,000. Well, I'm looking at probably $12,000 plus.
Yeah, corner lots are, by the definition of how they rule this, you have more sidewalk
Understandable.
adjoining the property. So again, we are reviewing those, and if you have, if you want to speak with us and give us your address, we'd be happy to meet you out there and give you a more detailed conversation about what we found earlier today when we walked Empire.
Okay, and then we talked about being with the American Disability Act compliant. Royal Manor Elementary School, now that would cover the entire property or just the sidewalk along the street?
Just the sidewalk. So this program is focusing on the sidewalk along the street.
Because you mentioned pedestrian access.
Correct.
Pedestrian access to the school, through the back of the school, because they have two access points, one on Triumph and Bonington Way. So those should have been also marked. And plus you have a path through the back there that's falling apart. And there's no ADA compliance there for anybody with any type of disability to get through there.
And I don't know the year that Royal Manor was initially constructed, but I'm going to go back to the
I
map.
think it was
'cause
62, 63.
Oh, there we go. So as
It's
you're.
in the entire purple
Yeah,
area
so
there.
what we did on this map was highlight the parcels that front Empire Drive. The inspection itself is occurring along the public roads. So corner lots, we are continuing around the corner. But for these two access points that you mentioned,
Yeah.
we do not and are not including these other streets as part of the program area.
So ADA compliance doesn't,
ADA compliance
does not
along
fall into
Empire
this property
Drive.
here?
So we're not going into the property. We're not going into the property and confirming that the sidewalk, say, running from your driveway to your front door is in repair or not.
Well, I
We're
understand, but
only
that's not
looking
public
at.
access.
Well, the school itself is not a public city parcel. So if there are concerns on the school district property, we could probably put you in touch with the right people at the school district to address those or help identify those.
Okay. But the Royal Manor's falling apart, and it's just, it needs a lot of repair. So I didn't know if they could force this to happen.
Not through this program.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a question back here.
My question is it necessary for you to add this payment or whatever onto the property tax?
So the way that we would not do that, there's two ways for that to not occur. One would be that you seek a contractor and make repairs on your own. The other would be an option to pay in full prior to it being added to the tax, which we're trying to make as part of this program, and we're going to communicate further on that as we get further along. But if the city goes through and does the work on behalf of the residents through the neighborhoods, the cost of that work would be assessed back to the property owner if those other two things didn't occur. And the way that works is just, the way a special assessment works is that it does go to the property taxes.
I'm at one of the first houses over on Empire. My question, well, part of it is, are any of the currently determined or determined as you go conditions for sidewalks to either be repaired or replaced, are they being changed or redacted at any point? Because I have approximately 2 panels for my driveway that admittedly those do need to be changed. They're like slightly breaking apart, but I have roughly 8 panels that I would be responsible for solely myself that may have 2-inch cracks that would qualify for needing repaired or replaced. But for the majority, the condition that I read up on the website is that there's evident or apparent gravel that is just naturally part of the concrete that's visible on the surface. And that's the sole reason from what I can see that it would need replaced. So that's, give or take, $2,000, broken up over 2 years, granted, but that the homeowner would be responsible for something that seems pretty inconsequential when you're, I don't know, taking everything into the grand scheme.
Yeah, and the conditions that you're describing of gravel, the surface not being smooth and tight concrete like new condition, that's one of the things that we were reviewing today, is how much of that truly is a hazard, to pedestrians or presents a public safety issue. And I'd like to get your information and go out and review that with you in person if we could. But the standards themselves haven't changed. What may have occurred out there is that they were not applied in the manner that we thought they would be. And again, we've looked at all of Empire today, and it's one particular type of scenario that we want to review in greater detail. And I do believe that is going to reduce the amount of sidewalks that are flagged as needing maintenance.
Okay. The other parts, of less importance, but just to clarify with the O's and X system, a lot of the X's have gone back over a couple of visits and have had red dots marked on a corner of the X. Could you clarify what that means?
Yeah, the city is going to be marking some to identify whether the white mark is been made incorrectly or not. So we want to guide both you and future contractors on whether or not the panel truly needs to be replaced. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is through marking panels separately if they were marked in error in the first go around.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I know you touched on this with like it being added to the taxes to the property. For any people that would be possibly moving within the next 5 years, does that stay on the taxes for the property, or is it enacted as like a lien on the property owner? So if they sell the home, they'd have to pay outright before it's done.
It is a good question. So most people who are paying a mortgage are paying property taxes oftentimes through their mortgage payment. And so when you transfer a property, the bank or the buyer or seller, they close out that mortgage and open a new account. And so oftentimes those taxes or the assessment would be paid off during the transfer of the property. I'm not certain that's every situation, but for most people who have their taxes being paid through a mortgage, it is part of the mortgage itself that gets closed out. One thing that we have in our code is that we don't want new home buyers to get surprised by this kind of thing And so we've identified that the current homeowners at the time the inspection is being conducted, they are the ones responsible for the repairs. I hope that answered your question. Kind of? Okay.
Have a question? They'd like the mic? Or anything they wrote down on a card we can answer? I don't see any more questions in the chat. I'll double check.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, what I will say again is that we, Caitlin and myself, are here to answer questions throughout the course of this program and in general at the city. And so, again, I'm John Moorhead. This is Caitlin Ridge. I have cards available for anybody who's present here. But also, if you email the sidewalks@gahanna.gov email, it will come to our attention. So we can come out and meet you and review any situations that you may have as they come up. We are happy to help, and we want to make sure that this process goes as smoothly as possible for the residents, and we don't surprise you along the way.
We did get one clarifying question. So are the panels with the red dots, are those still technically a work in progress?
Okay, so to clarify, I think the red dot question was those were red dots that were put in the grass. Those were just additional marks that the contractor, the consultant made as they were reviewing and going back and rechecking some things. So for all your purposes, you can ignore those. The only marks that are going to be indicated for the program are made directly on the sidewalk panel itself. So there's white X's. You might see some pink X's out there in a couple locations. Those have been marked as ones that have been marked in air. And as John mentioned, as we go out and do review and identify additional ones that need to be removed, we will be covering up the white X, and that should be in a pink color.
One other thing, the question of are they considered a work in progress? So at present, everything is a work in progress that's out there, right? You will be receiving a letter, and just to reiterate what's on this letter, it's going to have the property where you reside or that you own, and it's going to identify which sidewalks are in need of repair, both on a map that shows graphically where they are on the property, and also in the table, it's going to list what has been determined to be wrong with that sidewalk, so that residents can use this map to help go out and look at their sidewalks and actually determine where, number one, the sidewalk is in need of repair and what is wrong with it. So this is what will be the final notice you receive of what is truly wrong with the sidewalk. And when you get this mailer, it will include additional information about the program, about appeals, about choosing your own contractor, about getting a permit. And we'll also further clarify if there are changes to the markings at all, you will be informed of that.
Yes, Councilman Stephen Renner, I just really actually take a second and thank the mayor and John and Caitlin for having this discussion. I know this is the first time that we're having this, but ever since the first day I was elected to serve and represent Ward 1 on council, everybody has actually been talking about the sidewalks and the beautification of the neighborhoods. And so having discussions like this are paramount to actually increasing the value of our neighborhoods. And so I just want to say hats off to Mayor and to the staff for being able to put together a program that's well-funded and then answer these questions. I'm sure more residents are going to definitely, as more cognizance comes into being about these X's and O's, but I think we clearly heard what the process is going to be, that you're going to go out to the property owners. You're going to meet, you're going to discuss this, and then there's even a follow-up appeals process with our Property Appeals Board. So I think this is a very good and healthy discussion, and I hope that everybody embraces this with the intent that it is. And thank you again.
Nancy McGregor. I just had a question. What do they do if they're rental properties? How does that handled as far as with a non-residential owner?
That is a very good question. So the way that the law around this works is that is the property owner. So it is the adjoining property owner who would be ultimately responsible for, through our program, in paying the cost of the sidewalk repairs. We did send mailers out to both the physical address and, as we could find it, the owner's address. So if you are a tenant of a property and you don't own it, you may have received this same information because we wanted to make sure we got it in the hands of the people who would either own it or who live there and may be able to communicate with those who own it about what's going on. But the tenants themselves are not, the folks who we are trying to communicate directly with about this assessment process and the repairs that are going to be made. We want them to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and to
Any-
add to, I was gonna say, just to add to that, the mailer that we're talking about that will show the actual cost for the assessment, that is only gonna go to the property owner. So if you are a tenant, you will not receive, or likely will not receive, that mailer that shows the actual cost of the repairs because it's meant for the property owner.
Any other questions? Happy to pass around the mic. Several of them are staying. They're super excited about it. So if you have questions you want to come up and ask, they'll be available. If not, Mayor, back to you.
Thank you very much. And again, I would just really sincerely thank all of you for taking time to attend tonight. I think we have about 25 people watching online as well, so thank you for tuning in. Councilman Renner, thank you very much for your comments, but we all know it takes a village, and it certainly takes a council and an administration and a city attorney working together. And I mentioned at the outset of this that the sidewalk program was adopted last year officially, but it has been in discussion since 2015 for the last 6 years. This is not and again, I appreciated the questions. This is not a new responsibility for homeowners. It is not new enforcement, but it is a new program to help with that responsibility and with the enforcement. And that's the really critical difference here. And we are thrilled to be able to have put this program together. There was a lot of work done by these two individuals sitting on either side of me to put this program together over the last year and a half. A lot of communication happened with our council members over the past year to implement this. The one thing I would say, there were so many great questions tonight, both raised from you here attending in person and those of you online, and even questions that came in ahead of time. Thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to ask us questions and to give us a chance to answer those questions. That is, I'm going to use the word Councilman Renner used because it was so great, paramount. To have the ability to answer your questions directly, to provide you with the correct information and the most accurate information is just critical to keeping that level of communication going on between the city and all of our residents. We heard John and Caitlin mention many times, this is the first year of this program. As you have questions with this, please call us. I can guarantee you that the most informed people who can answer your questions are right here. These two right here. They literally have put this program together and they are working on it pretty much, I'm guessing, night and day. It feels like it, doesn't, John? Night and day, right? But they are more than happy. They'll talk to you. They will come out to your property. They will walk through it with you. If you have a question, they're happy to take a look at it and to reevaluate that for you and to make sure that whatever information you're getting is the correct information. Again, it's the first year. Everybody's adjusting to this. There's going to be bumps in the road, no pun intended. We're trying to get those bumps out, but there will be bumps in the road. But work with us, be patient with us, but please just reach out directly. They are happy to come out and talk to you. reach out to my office. If they're out on Empire walking a street and you can't get a hold of somebody, just call me and I will get to them as well. But we are here for you. We are here to answer your questions. We're here to work with you and provide you with the information that you need. Again, what was the, John, what was the email and phone number?
Sidewalks@gahanna.gov.
Oh, there we go.
And then phone number is 614-342-4050.
All right. So, and again, information is available on the website, gahanna.gov as well. So thank you again. Thank you again for tuning in tonight. Thank you for being here. And everybody stay safe this week and keep an eye on the weather. Thanks a lot.
Be stick